I've been a public speaker for 9 years, and in that time, I've done over 400 speeches, inspired hundreds of thousands of people from the stage, and even received praise from some very familiar faces. But the thing is, it's been an absolute grind to get to where I am now. So in this video, I'm going to condense 9 years of public speaking into 17 lessons so you can maximize your impact and your influence as well as your income. The first lesson is vital, but if you can master this lesson, I'm telling you, you will be able to captivate any audience, no matter whether it's 100,000 people or 10 people, and you'll be able to connect with others like you've never done before. You see, the problem is most professional speakers don't do this next step, especially those in the corporate world. And those that do usually miss the mark with it. This is something all the greats such as Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Winston Churchill, Barack Obama, Steve Jobs, and even Jesus himself had in common. And you wouldn't believe it, but my granddad also had this in common. What? Cordell, your granddad's got something in common with Jesus? Yes, let me explain. Whenever I stayed at my granddad's house as a kid, I used to always play with the plug sockets. I was always told not to do it, but I was a kid and I just didn't listen. One time, instead of my granddad just telling me no, he actually told me a story. He told me that when he was younger, he had a friend that once put their finger into a plug socket, got electrocuted, ended up in hospital and nearly died. He told me how much pain his friend was in and how it traumatized his friend's life. Now ask me, after hearing that story, did I ever play with the plug socket again? Nope. Why is that? It's because every time I thought about doing it, I remembered the gruesome story about my granddad's friend. Which is why this next step is great speakers create stories that stick in the minds and the hearts of their audience, so the message is always remembered. So when you're next presenting or delivering your next speech, don't just share some boring bullet points or facts or corporate jargon. Use more color in your palette, create pictures, and create great stories in the mind of your audience. Now, this next lesson that I'm about to share, 99% of speakers don't implement it. And by not doing so, they are making a big mistake. But the speakers that do this effectively are always on to winning presentations. Now, I want you to imagine yourself on Netflix, scrolling, looking for a film. You're clicking into them and you might watch the trailer at first and see, is this the right vibe for you? But when that film starts, you're probably going to give it 5, 10, or at a push 15 minutes before you know, is this the film for you or not? But the ones that keep you there, the ones that hook your attention, are the ones that start with action, with some sort of story, some sort of hook, something that grips your attention from the very beginning. And those that make you curious to want to know more. And that's no different to when presenting. But instead of giving something 5, 10 minutes, your audience is going to give you a few seconds. So it's important that you grip their attention. Now, if you don't grip their attention, it's not like they're going to walk up in an auditorium or inside a venue and walk out the doors. But what they will do is they will mentally lock off. And instead of listening to your message, they're thinking about, did I leave the iron on? What am I going to eat for dinner tonight? Is my husband okay? Did I iron the kids' school clothes for the morning? They're thinking about everything other than what you're saying. So that's why this lesson is so important. Engage your audience from the outset. Now, since we're on the topic of films, that brings me to my next lesson. As speakers, our job is to provide value, make a difference, or transform the beliefs of our audience. The thing is, most speakers don't implement the next lesson, and the reason that they don't is because they're trying to sound like somebody they're not. They're trying to sound overly intelligent, or they are just not qualified to talk on the topic. Now, back to films. I remember watching this one film one time and it started okay, but by the end of it, I thought to myself, that made no sense of just wasting my time. Do you know them films? You've probably watched a few of them, right? And by the end of the film, I was just so confused and disappointed. And I was so disappointed that I looked up the director. And what happened when I done that? I put that director on my never watch a film by this person list. And that's my lesson. Make sure your message is crystal clear, because if it's not, the audience will simply tune out. And if you don't make your message clear, you're wasting your time. And most importantly, you're wasting your audience's time. This will completely ruin your credibility and your career as a speaker. Now, the next lesson is one of the most important lessons if you want to become an engaging speaker. Most speakers don't do this next point, which absolutely kills their credibility and bores. And when I mean bores, I mean get a pillow, this is going to be a long day type of boring. But those that do use this next point have incredible speeches and they engage their audience. This next point is like seasoning, right? When you add a little bit on your presentation, it's spicy. But if you don't add this seasoning onto your presentation, it's dry and bland. Now, I want you to see this like an ECG machine that tracks the beat of your heart. Now, how do you know somebody's alive? Because you can see the pattern going up, going down, going up, going down. How do you know somebody's dead? Because the line is just straight. And that's what will happen in your speech if you have a monotone. If you speak with one tonality throughout the whole speech, you are killing your speech. So add seasoning to your presentation, speak with emotion, use the highs, use the lows, pause, and let messages land. Speak with emotion and make sure that your words are penetrating the minds and the hearts of your audience. And that brings me on to lesson number 5. Now, this next lesson is very important if you want to become a speaker that gets booked on stages and if you want to be known as a speaker that has an impact on others. Now, if you don't decide to implement this next lesson, you will just become an average speaker. And who wants to be average? You will never become a speaker that is truly remembered and that is known as being world class. Now, I remember early in my speaking career, I wanted to be an inspirational or motivational speaker, right? I used to watch a lot of Americans such as Tony Robbins, Les Brown, tell great stories and share their stories from hardship to, success. And I wanted to do something similar. So when I first started public speaking, I'd go into schools, colleges, and some organization, just sharing my story. And even though that was good, after watching world-class speakers, I realized that wasn't enough. You need to provide value. And I'm talking about value that's going to make an instant impact, something tangible that your audience can go away and implement or create a new mental model of, or make a paradigm shift with. Start thinking about yourself and how you sound and come across, because your audience realistically don't care about you. They're thinking, well, what's in it for me? And when you shift your mind as a speaker to making sure that you are delivering to your audience and thinking about their needs, that's when you become world class. And that brings me on to my next lesson. You must leave your audience with actionable insights that outlive your speech. So what do I mean by that? I mean, give your audience practical advice, tangible frameworks that they can go away and implement straight away. You want your audience to leave your presentation knowing that they've made a change, knowing that you've transformed the person they were before they listened to you. Now, this next lesson is definitely one of the most important lessons. And when people don't do it, it's literally a pet hate of mine. If you want to create a following, if you want to build a community of people who are your tribe, then this next point is a non-negotiable. You see, in the world of social media, online gurus and influencers, there's many people that are not being true to who they are. They are pretending to be someone else. It's be authentic, be real, and just be you. You see, when you're real, people feel it. It's an energy transfer. But when you're not, they feel that too. So you need to ditch this fake it till you make it ideology. Audience connects with truth, not performance. Your individuality is your superpower. So go and own it. And that brings me on to lesson number 7. You see, most people dream of having a successful speaking career and they want to start, but they don't. They let ants get into their mind. And what do I call ants? A-N-T, automatic negative thoughts. And those thoughts say you're not good enough, you're not qualified, you don't have the right experience, nobody's going to listen to you, you're not great at speaking. And this stops you from starting your career as a speaker. And these automatic negative thoughts happen to the best of us. It even happened to me when I first started out in my speaking career. I used to think I'm too young. Who's going to listen to me from the background that I'm from? I'm not good enough. I used to even think, well, I ain't even got nothing to speak about. But that's where I was wrong. And that brings me to the lesson. Lead with what you know. You don't need to be famous or flawless. You just need to be a few steps ahead to become a speaker. Imposter syndrome is a lie. You have value right now. Share what you've learned. Share what you've been through. Share challenges that you had to overcome and the lessons that you learned from them. This is all experience. This is all expertise. So lead with what you know and start your speaking career today. Lesson number 8. Now, this lesson is crucial if you want to accelerate your success in thought leadership or as a public speaker. And this next lesson is just important if you want to become a world-class speaker anyway. You see, in my early career as a speaker, I wasn't quite sure what to do. And remember, I used to search for speakers locally, nationally, and worldwide. Speakers that were better than me. Speakers that were further along the journey that I was about to embark on. Now, I remember listening to Les Brown, who's a world-renowned motivational speaker, and I implemented and modeled what he done on stage. I copied what he done, but I added my own seasoning, so it was like I remixed it. In my early career, he was like a mentor for me without him even knowing that he was a mentor of mine. And eventually, once my brand got known and I was speaking on stages, I actually was invited to speak on a virtual platform with Les Brown, the same person who inspired my journey as a public speaker. And that brings me to the lesson of study the greats and model success. Model what they do and make it your own. Model their beliefs, model how they show up, model what their strategy is to get the next big speaking engagement. Whatever you're trying to do as a speaker or in thought leadership, it's already been done. So find somebody that you can model. Great speakers are great students first in your career as a thought leadership. Now, the next point is so important if you want to get paid, if you want to become well known, and if you want to have a successful career in thought leadership or as a public speaker. When I first started public speaking, I was thinking to myself, who is going to book me as a speaker? It was so hard to get bookings. But what was the easiest and possibly the most affordable way for me to get on stages? It was showing up in the right places at the right time. I would go to events nationally, locally, networking events where I would meet new people, get myself in different social circles, go to corporate business events where I would connect with senior leaders. I would do as much as I could to become visible. But I had to show up. I had to show up in the right rooms and I had to find a seat at the table. And that's what my next lesson is. Become visible and build great relationships. Just hoping you're going to get booked isn't a good strategy. Use your network, reach out to people, get yourself in communities and be intentional. Deliver value, offer value. And I promise people will reach out to you, or when you reach out to them, they will respond and want to help you. Visibility plus relationships equal bookings. And that means money in the bank. Now that brings me on to lesson number 10. Lesson number 10 is so important because if you don't implement this lesson, you won't be known for anything. You won't be considered the go-to person or the expert. So let's put it this way. Let's say you needed a heart transplant and there was a choice of 2 surgeons. Are you going to go to the surgeon that generalizes in most operations? Or are you going to pick the surgeon that is specialized only in heart transplants? Tell me. You tell me who you would pick. And that brings me to the lesson of find your niche. Don't try to speak about every topic and become the jack of all trades and the master of nothing. Find a niche, master it, and be well known. This is what's going to put a lot of money in your bank in thought leadership. Now, this next lesson, lesson number 11, is so important. And it's something that I learned late in my public speaking career. And I don't want you to make the same mistake when starting out. By not implementing this next step, you are going to leave so much money on the table as a speaker. But not just leaving money on the table, you're going to leave people behind. People that need you, people that want you, people that need your help and guidance. You won't be able to do it in the most effective way. When I first started speaking as a motivational speaker, I would speak on stages all around the country. And I always used to have a great presentation. I would share my story. I would share some actionable points that the audience can go away and implement. But there was one thing that I didn't do. And I realized that this was killing my career. So if you want to have a long career in thought leadership and public speaking, make sure you implement this next lesson. And the lesson is offer your audience the next logical step. What do I mean by that? Now, if you're a great speaker, after your presentation, people are going to want to work with you. That's where you have to offer them some form of service, whether that be mentoring, training, coaching, a retreat of some kind. You need to have an offer. You need to have something that you can enroll your audience into. I went from a speaker that would get paid decent to speak to now making good income from my career as a thought leader, because I decided that any audience that I speak in front of, I would always offer them the next logical step if they want to work with me further. This next step is so important because without it, you just won't get contacted for speaking engagements. You won't make it on any big platforms and nobody's going to be interested in working with you. But if you do the next step correctly, you will be able to accelerate your career as a speaker and a thought leader. This next step is something that I've been doing from my very first speech. It's something that is compulsory and something that has been able to build me into a successful speaker. And that next step is gathering testimonials. Make sure wherever you speak, I don't care if you speak in front of 2 people, 5 people, 1,000 or 10,000, make sure that you're gathering testimonial. If you're delivering a speech, because it's testimonials that will give you social proof, and social proof as a speaker is literally your weapon. And ask for it every time. Ask it from the audience members or the event organizers. Your testimonial shows results. And a speaker with results becomes a speaker in demand. Now, this next step, if you don't have much credibility or you're not known as a speaker, it combines the last step very well of getting testimonials. The next lesson is crucially important in the very early days as you becoming a speaker. And that is speaking for experience. What do I mean speak for experience? As a speaker, you just have to be hungry. And at the start, you got to practice the skill of speaking. So make sure you can get on any stage possible, whether that's a panel, whether that's a presentation, whether that's delivering it for free. Just make sure you're speaking for experience in the very early days, because what you can then do is you can combine the last lesson of getting a testimonial. And if you can get testimonials early on, so speak for free, your first 5-6 speeches, and you will be able to turn those free talks into income based on the leverage of the content and the testimonials that you have. The next lesson is so important because with this next step, it can help you have a successful career as a speaker, impacting thousands of people and living fully whilst doing it. Without this next step, you just won't be able to survive. You just will not persevere and push your career as a speaker, because without this next step, you have no business, you have no career. And I had to learn the hard way. You're not Stephen Bartlett. You're not Tony Robbins. You're not just going to get bookings and inquiries of speaking engagements every day in your inbox. You have to make sure you have a strategy, an outreach strategy to reach the people that you want. So the next step is having a strategy for speaking engagements. Now, once you've implemented the last 3 lessons, this lesson also becomes so important. Now you've been able to build your brand, you have a strategy for speaking, you have great testimonials. It's time for you to implement this next lesson. I remember a time when an event organizer reached out for me. There was multiple speakers on this event and I was actually the keynote speaker. So I ended the presentation. And even though I may have been one of the better speakers and I was the keynote speaker, I charged the less. And the reason why it's because I didn't have a set price. So that brings me on to this lesson. Know your price. As a speaker, knowing what your price is going to be important, because people will try their hardest to get you for free or for less budget. Stand firm, know what your price is, and understand the value that you bring for the world. You're not charging because you've been doing speaking for 6 months or charging by the hour. You're charging based on your overall experience and the value that you can add. Now, this next lesson is so important. Most speakers don't do it. And because they don't, they get found out and it's almost as though they're a fraud. Make sure you're implementing this next step, because if you're not implementing this next step, I promise you, you will not have a successful career in public speaking. If you want to have a good personal and career balance as a speaker, this next step is also so important. And the next step is live by your own advice. Now, that might sound simple, that might sound easy, but for most, it's not. They speak on stage, they guide others. They may do a good job doing so, but they are not being congruent with the person they are off stage. So make sure what you say on stage in public is something that you practice in private. Now, the next lesson is important, especially if you want to grow your career as a speaker. It's very important to have this next lesson implemented soon as you start. They don't have to be great, they don't have to be fancy, but it's important that you have some form, which is build your speaking assets. What do I mean by speaking assets? Any website landing pages where people can get in contact with you to book you, and where event organizers can find out a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and the topics that you speak on. Having speaker assets make you look professional, credible, and easy to work with. Now, if you want to have an impact on the world and you want to leave a legacy, then this next point is so important. I remember when I first started speaking, my first speech, I enjoyed it so much that I said to myself, I have to keep doing more. And every time I've done a speech, the feedback that I would get, people saying, Cordell, you've changed my life, or Cordell, what you said up there gave me so much confidence. Knowing that I was impacting people like this with my voice, it gave me the hunger to think big. Think beyond your community, think beyond your nation, think as big as the globe. This work of thought leadership as a public speaker, as somebody that makes impact. You're not in a business. Do you know what type of business you're in? You're in the business of change. And that is so important. You can make a change in this world and you can really leave a legacy. Leave your mark, because when you speak and you resonate with people's hearts, your words will live long after your presentations are finished. So don't just think this is a small career and it has to be small. You can take it as big as you want, and you can become a world-renowned thought leader in your field. So go on, do it, think big, take action, and build the dream you deserve. And that's the next lesson, is to think big. But here's the thing, just knowing these lessons alone won't turn you into an impactful or world-class speaker overnight. So watch this video where I'll show you the right way to use your words, captivate and inspire thousands.